Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning again. I will start because we are very committed to be faithful to the time frame that we have, and we really want to have some time for questions and discussions at the end. So please do prepare your questions. Think about these works critically. I'm sure all of the presenters will be happy to think through their work with you. So each of them will have 15 minutes, and then we have some time for questions. I would like to start by saying that this is a session about multivocal museology, but in fact, most of these works are discussing the idea of the island from different perspectives. So I would like to start just by making us think about beyond the island as territory, the island as islands of culture, islands of knowledge, islands of morals and ethics, islands of collections, islands of material culture. So some of these works will be dealing with these differentiations of how islands can be interpreted in the museum context and how museums tackle this notion, and how sometimes even museums have the obligation to dismantle these islands when they are attached to colonial histories and heritage. So I will introduce our first speaker, Clémentine Desbrosses, who is a... Sorry, yes, no, my file is wrong. Starting again, Clémence Foisy Marquis, Clémentine is after her, who is a French and Canadian researcher. She currently works in Montreal since 2014. She has a master's degree in museology from the University of Montreal. Also, she has a licensed degree in literature from the University of Rennes and one in the administration of arts from the University of Angers. In 2014. So she is certified to work with creative projects, and she currently researches methodologies that can be understood, according to her, as decolonial collaborative methodologies related to contemporary art and new medias. She's currently a museographer working to the GSM project, Studio of Design and Display. Clémence, the floor is yours.
So hello everyone, I'm Clémence and I'm super glad to be here today to speak about the research I did a year ago at the University of Montreal. Before jumping into my research, here's a bit of introduction and context about Montreal. Montreal is an island. Sometimes we forget it because it's an inland island. So the name of the island in indigenous language is Tiohtià:ke in Kanien'kehá:ka and Muniang in Anishinaabe. It's an unceded indigenous territory that has provided a meeting place for many indigenous nations over the course of a very long history. So the St. Lawrence Iroquoians that are no longer here, the Kanien'kehá:ka, the Anishinaabe, the Abenaki, the Naskapi, the Innu, and the Inuit. In indigenous languages, Montreal means a gathering place, a place of encounter. And it's really important as a notion in the installation I'm going to present you. In 2018, I went to the Digital Arts Biennale in Montreal, and I got amazed by the installation like Ships in the Night by Caroline Monet. Mostly the artwork is about the sea, and the visitor is immersed in the waves, and like all of you must do, I love the sea. So I got amazed and fell in love with this installation. So 2 years after, when I started the master degree, I really wanted to focus my research on that installation, and I got the opportunity to interview Caroline Monet. Caroline Monet is one of the most prominent contemporary artists in Canada right now. She is of Anishinaabe ancestry and French ancestry, so she has a transnational identity. She was born in Gatineau, Canada, near Ottawa, and now lives and works in Montreal, Muniang, Tiohtià:ke. She explored in her works her indigenous identity and a bicultural living through the examination of her identity. In her 15 years career, her work has been multidisciplinary, so she has been using as well as new media, industrial materials, and now she explores fashions. So in her work, she blends indigenous and Western codes, and her practice is by definition contemporary art because this is profoundly conceptual. So the installation centers around the film Transatlantic, which is documenting a 22 days journey across the Atlantic Ocean that Monet took in the summer of 2012. So Monet wanted to explore her identity through the two sides of her ancestors. In her words, Monet really wanted to explore what happens when you come from two territories and how can we communicate between two different nations. What is the lack of communication between two nations and how can they reconcile? The film is in dialogue with a set of sculptures named Proximal, and these sculptures are both delimiters and connectors in the space. So as an indigenous woman, Caroline Monet wants to critique the colonial industrial economic interchange between Canada and Europe on the Atlantic Ocean. And with her installation, she creates a space of communication beyond cultures and languages because she's using a sound environment made of Morse code and radio signal. The questions I have regarding this installation, and I have many questions, but like all of you participating in this conference, this is mostly regarding decolonization and indigenization of museology. Some advocates, such as author Shimrit Lee in her book and Caroline Monet herself in interviews, that museums cannot be decolonized because museums are colonial spaces. But museums can change, and museums can incorporate indigenous ways of doing knowledges and beliefs. So the questions that inhabits me and guided my research is, can we change our way of doing museology? Can I change my own way of doing research and practicing my work in museums? And can indigenous artists change the museum with their art? So this is what I wanted to study and show with the unique documentation of the installation Like Ships in the Night. But first, a few words of my methodology. My guiding principles were really based on 4 pillars. And I really wanted those pillars to be based on indigenous researchers, to be influenced by indigenous people. So the first guiding principle was about listening Caroline Monet herself. So my research is based on oral testimony of Caroline Monet, but I couldn't put that in the material of discussion. So the second pillar itself is documented journey. So since yesterday, I keep hearing that stories change as they travel. And this is something I wanted to document in showing you the transformation of the installation through each stop that the installation did. The third guiding principle was the notion of interconnection. So it's a constant posture in everything I do to connect ideas, people, and elements together. And it's actually an indigenous notion, the principle of all my relation. And it's explained in one of the ICOFOM article in 2021 by PhD Dr. Karine Duhamel. And last but not least, my whole methodology was about educating myself and reflecting on myself. Because what does it mean for me as a settler in Canada to study Caroline Monet and having interest in her work? So for sure, this research was about educating myself, and I'm still learning a lot about decolonization, and participating in that conference is also a part of it. So what I will show you in so the documentation of the journey of the installation, it's that notion of art as a living process. And it's actually an indigenous perspective on art, to seeing art as a living thing. So I'll show you that journey, which is interesting because Money took that journey in 2012, and the installation itself went on a journey. So you will see some addition and readaptation in the format of the installation, and it shows the breadth of possibilities and curatorial possibilities with the artwork. So Caroline Monet created the installation Like Ships in the Night in 2018 at the Walter Phillips Gallery in Banff, Alberta. It was after a second invitation by Peter Rake, who is an Australian curator. Since then, Rake and Monet really developed a working collaboration and built a relationship. So to me, it's a really important decolonial strategy to build a relationship with Indigenous artists and to invest and support their career precisely at the beginning of their career, such as Peter Rake did. The same year, the installation was presented at the Montreal Digital Arts Biennale, where I sit, and the event took place at the Arsenal, which is a contemporary gallery located in a former site of shipyard. And the site was monumental and huge and just amplified the immersion of the installation. And during the Biennale, Money was presented among local and global digital artists. She was not labeled as an indigenous work. So this is also another decolonial strategy to just exhibit indigenous artists among other artists in a particular field, such as digital art. In 2019, the works Transatlantique and Proximal, so the installation itself, were acquired by the National Gallery of Canada. And it's important to say that in the collection of the National Gallery of Canada, there is a big gap between the Western objects and Indigenous objects, which are really less represented. So the NGC acquired the two artworks before being presented as part of a major international contemporary indigenous art exhibition named Abadakone Continuous Fire Feu Continuel, curated by an international group of curators. So during the major exhibition, the installation changed its name. It became Monuments and More. So with the change of name, the meaning transformed. And at the event, Money installation was presented among other 70 other artists from 40 indigenous nations of 16 different countries. So this international aspect of indigenous art attests to the globalization of indigeneity and the integration of indigenous art in the more global network of contemporary art. In parallel of this institutional presentation, the Blois Division Gallery, which is representing the artist, presented only the film Transatlantique in its New York gallery, but with a new set of sculpture. And the exhibition was titled Shallow Mirror Eye Tower. And from now on, it's really interesting to document and see what is the past from the institution with the NGC acquisition and the past that the artist is doing by herself with her gallery, because she owns her own copy of the film. During 2021, the National Gallery of Canada presented Transatlantique and Proximal, so without any specific installation name, as part of a major touring exhibition entitled Magnetic North. So it was an exhibition organized as part of Canada's presence as guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair. This exhibition was displayed at the Museum of Art in Frankfurt, Germany, and at the Museum of Art in Rotterdam, Netherlands. The exhibition was presenting for the first time in Europe 87 works from the group of 7 and 5 contemporary films, including 2 by Money. For those who don't know, the Group of Sevens are famous landscape artists of the beginning of the 20th century. So the dialogue between the masterpiece of Canadian painting and contemporary indigenous creation was to challenge the myth of terra nullius, one-on-one, and the vast inhabited representation of Canada by the Group of Seven, which is a romanticized vision of Europeans, and the affirmation of the indigenous presence on the territories through the contemporary work. Same year, Transatlantic was presented at the Broad Art Museum in Michigan State, so in the Great Lakes region. This time, so the movie Transatlantic was dialoguing with a new set of sculptures, referencing the message of the art. So despite this variation in form, Monet reinforced here her message about communal boundaries, given that Michigan region is at the border of Canada, separating the ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe nation, so her nations. And last year, her work was presented in Vastivière, France, and again, it was the film by itself, but Caroline Monet was doing a new set of sculpture to reinterpret the meaning of the artwork. This quick overview of the installation journey just demonstrates the richness of possible links in order to address and activate critical dialogues on colonialism and the occupation of the territory. On other ways, it gives ideas and possibilities of new ways of curating in terms of creation and recreation, exhibition, acquisition, and building relationship with the artist. In conclusion, beyond the contact zone and the concept of contact zone, Caroline Monet wants to create a middle ground. So Monet really generates a space of communication. So what is the concept of middle ground, which has been developed by historian Richard White? So according to the historian, the first people and European settlers had developed a space of peaceful exchange despite cultural and linguistic gaps during the first 2 centuries of contact. So in the Caroline Monet works and in the image of her work, the ocean and the ship are not only zones of negative violence and colonial violence, but with her installations, she wants to create a positive zones of agreements and reconciliation between people. So Monet installations, to me, creates a common ground between sculpture, creating new images and endless conversations to meet and to get to know each other in the hope of reconciliation. Thank you.